How to write in media studies. Let's talk about theory. This is an important part of the A level. And while in component 1 there's no specific requirement to use theory in your responses, the mark schemes do say this. Analysis is perceptive, detailed, and may be informed by relevant theorists. And so you need to know your theory to access the top marks. I'm constantly frustrated by poor uses of theory in responses. The most common mistake is simply to throw it in at the end of a paragraph. Let's say you've written a really detailed deconstruction of a media text, and then you go and say something like this. This adheres to Van Zoonen's feminist theory. This doesn't tell me anything about the theory. It doesn't tell me how it applies to the text, and it certainly isn't getting us any marks. So let's take a look at 3 ways we can use theory effectively in our answers. This is probably the most obvious way of using theory, and it does, of course, require learning some of the key quotations. Let's take a look at an example. The Formation music video features counter-stereotypical representations of women of colour. The media is often criticised for not portraying, quote, the complexity of the black female experience, end quote. Yet, with the sheer variety of female characters in Formation, as well as a distinct focus on black history in America, the producers have constructed a, quote, broader, more complex vision of womanhood, end quote. Hooks. One example of this is, and from here we would go on to offer evidence of counter-stereotypes in the text. Notice how this quote doesn't sit in isolation. It is embedded into an already analytical sentence, and so we're applying bell hooks' concepts to our own ideas. Now, not every theorist is going to have easily applicable, neat quotations like this. Take Curran and Seaton, for example. Their book, Power Without Responsibility, is focused entirely on the news media, and yet we use their ideas to talk about a whole range of media forms. Therefore, we're lacking any effective quotations. However, let's take a look at Curran and Seaton's ideas as stated by the exam board. The idea that the media is controlled by a small number of companies, primarily driven by the logic of profit and power. The idea that media concentration generally limits or inhibits variety, creativity, and quality. The idea that more socially diverse patterns of ownership help to create the conditions for more varied and adventurous media productions. And so instead of quotations, let's use the language of their key concepts in our responses. Here's an example. The film I, Daniel Blake is produced by the independent production company 16 Films. It has been argued that independently produced films are far more likely to demonstrate a level of variety and creativity, and this is in part due to the more socially diverse pattern of ownership that is independent cinema, Curran and Seaton. I, Daniel Blake, for example, with its narrative focus on working class issues in the north of England, and again we would continue with more evidence that I, Daniel Blake is both varied and adventurous. Here we've used the exact same terminology and phrasing. We've applied these ideas to the text, and we've even given the theorist names in brackets. This makes it crystal clear to the examiner that we know where these ideas come from. These previous 2 ways are used in theory to back up our own ideas. So why don't we change this around? Instead, why don't we look at a media text through the eyes of a theorist? Take this example. Considering the Assassin's Creed franchise from the theoretical perspective of Henry Jenkins, it can be argued that the success of the brand is in large part due to fandom. Jenkins theorizes that fans are the most active of all audiences, creating their own participatory culture in the form of online communities, forums, and channels. Jenkins. The producers of Assassin's Creed have embraced this fan culture by... This frames our analysis nicely and makes it clear from the outset that we are looking at a specific reading of a text. Perhaps then we're going to look at a text from a feminist perspective and use the theories of Van Zoonen, Hooks, and Butler. Perhaps we look at a text from a post-colonial perspective, using Gilroy and Hall to guide our analysis. These are all really effective ways of applying theory. It's going to improve the standard of our writing and the quality of our analysis.